And hello there, everybody. This is just going to be a solo podcast for me this week. Paul is not able to make it today, so you just got me. And as you can see, wearing a Manchester City here. Let me turn this off for a second. Manchester City kid here. This is thankful to the other half of our podcast, Paul, as a Christmas present. He got me a turn it around. A nice Phil Foden kit here because he knows I'm a big Phil Foden fan. So thank you, Paul, my fellow top bins with twins podcast host. But so it'll just be me this week. So I'm looking forward to talking with you all. We'll get this out right before the deadline and hopefully help you all make some last minute decisions before we go into this upcoming game week. So as we get things started here, we need to establish that we're going into game week 19. This is a midweek deadline. So the deadline here in the US, Eastern time, deadline is going to be at, it would be 1:30 Eastern time tomorrow. Let me check that. Oh, nope. That is not correct. It's actually 1 o'clock Eastern time, Eastern Standard Time. So do not be caught out by that deadline. It is a sneaky one because it's a midweek fixture. So, mentioning a midweek fixture, I need to go back and talk about the previous weekend for game week 18. I ended up on 59 points. I had a captaincy blank for Holland, so I got 4 points from him, but ended up having my all of my midfielders returning, which saved my game week, and then DeFracco with his 11-pointer. So I had my back line of O'Reilly, Virgil, and Hall, all of them blanked. And then I had Cherokee with his 13 points, which good work, Cherokee. That was a really good performance from him. Soccer with 7 points. He gets the assist and then bonus point as well. Wilson gets the assist for Fulham's lone goal this weekend, and then I have Verts for his 10-pointer. And congratulations, Florian Verts. Regardless of who you are or what team you support, it's difficult when you see a very talented player go to a new club and they struggle. Verts has started to put in performances as of late that seem more promising. He seems to have more of a flow and rhythm to his game. And as everyone says, the Premier League is just a different beast unto itself. And this kind of demonstrates that it just takes time to adapt sometimes. And fortunately, it looks like he's catching up to the pace of the Premier League and the physicality as well. So, any other Florian Wirtz owners out there that had him for Game Week 18, congratulations to you all. Enjoy the haul. And then up front, I also had Voltemade with 2 points, Holland, like I said, with his 2 points and the captaincy, and then Jared Bowen with 2 points. Was a really frustrating 2 points from Jared Bowen. I thought that watching the highlights back, there was more in it for him, but we continue on. It's why I brought him in because he'll be a good long-term hold. It wasn't just a 1 week shout with him this week. So, um, yeah, but I am currently in the stages of planning out my team for what I want to do going into game week 19. And I thought now would be a good time to kind of share what I expect going forward and what teams I think could easily be targeted. I do want to shout out a reference here that I'm using. We want to refer to the sites that we're pulling this information from. It is FPL.page. This was started by FPL Focal, one of the bigger content creators in the FPL content creation world. But what we're first going to look at is their fixture ticker section. The top three for the next 5 fixtures, we have Newcastle United, West Ham, and then Brentford. We really want to highlight Newcastle because I think that while things have been really off for them as of late, they have a great run coming up where they have Burnley away in game week 19. So we're 1 day away from that fixture as of the time of recording this. And then it goes Crystal Palace at home, which we know Newcastle are a little bit different when they're at home. So that should be a good fixture. And then we have Leeds at home, which is another really good fixture for Newcastle. We have an international break between game week 21 and game week 22. And then it's Wolves away and Aston Villa at home. So all five of those are very good fixtures. And I think if you don't have any Newcastle assets, I would encourage you all to look into bringing in some of their assets. Who I would look at, I think Voltamade is someone that I feel good about at the moment. I think that Wissa needs to start sometime in the near future, but I think it would be Voltamade playing with Wissa is what my thought process is there. Newcastle just are not quite clicking the way that I know they and their fans would be hoping they would be. So that's something I think we all need to keep an eye on because if Wissa comes into the fold, he's someone to keep an eye on. He could have a nice high upside there, and but what does that do to Newcastle's shape? Because we know that Eddie Howe's been pretty married to the 4-3-3 shape. So in order to play Wissa and Voltamade, you might need to go to a 4-2-3-1 or something like a 4-4-2. I don't know exactly what that would look like for him, but it's kind of where my thoughts would go there. So keep an eye on that. And secondly, we have West Ham for best fixtures of the upcoming run. I think West Ham, if you're going to go there, Jared Bowen is the sole one you would go for. No one else. I mean, Paqueta's really cheap, and we think he's on pins, but I'm not convinced by Paqueta. If something's going to happen, it really feels like it would be through Bowen, and that's what it looked like against Fulham. He had some really good chances and a couple of good saves as well, but didn't get a return. So, but there's always that's like I said in the intro. The reason why I brought Bowen is because West Ham do have really good fixtures over the long term, which go Brighton at home, Wolves away, Nottingham Forest at home, Tottenham away, and then Sunderland at home. All of those good fixtures, all of those are really good fixtures. Three of the next five are at home, and West Ham need to start getting some points on the board. So it's kind of reaching desperation station for the Hammers. So they need to start getting some points on the board. Yeah, and then third that I mentioned on the list as well is Brentford. Brentford have some of the best fixtures. They have Tottenham at home, Everton away, Sunderland at home, Chelsea away, and then Nottingham Forest at home. That is a really good run, and I think a lot of people will be piling into Kevin Shada. He gets the hat trick this weekend, ends up on a 20-pointer. So if you had him in your team, congratulations. That is a absolute haul to be getting. So that's pretty incredible and something that you timed it right if you have him. So bravo to those owners that got those 20 points this week. Next, I want us to go through some expected figures and talk about this because this gives us an idea of which players we really should be targeting based upon how they're performing in game, whether or not they returned or not. We can use these expected figures to give us an idea of, okay, well, maybe they haven't returned, but maybe sometime in the next couple of weeks it's going to average out and they'll start getting the returns. So as I mentioned, Shada was number one for XGI this week. He had an XGI of 3.0, which is pretty crazy. XGI, as I should mention, stands for expected goal involvement. So that's the number of goals or assists you would expect. How you get to XGI is you combine expected goals, so XG, and then adding that to expected assist or XA. So XG plus XA equals XGI. I know we've talked about that on the podcast, but just a quick refresher for anyone out there who might be a new listener and hasn't heard the terminology there. So Shot ends up with an XGI of 3 for game week 18. And then we have Verts on the second on the list with an XGI of 1.1, tied with Cherokee and Kluivert, who also had XGIs of 1.1. And then going down the list, a couple more names to mention here. We had Aronson next, some followed by Saka, Semenyo, Wilson, and then Brooks and Trossard rounding that out. So some really interesting differentials in there. Kluivert, someone to keep an eye on. Aronson has been playing really well. Leeds have really kind of kicked it into high gear late as of late. They have won, I can tell you real fast. Leeds have, let's see. So they have drawn or won out of their last five. So they drew this previous weekend against Sunderland, and then they won before that, a draw, and then a win before that as well too. So they're in really good form. They've pushed above fourth in the table, and I'm interested to see where Leeds go from here because if they can continue their form, they could get a really nice gap between them and the relegation zone. But you never know how these things go. One injury or a loss of form, and Leeds could be right back in that battle. But as of now, we've got West Ham, Burnley, and Wolves that are, pretty assuredly at this point carrying themselves to relegation. Like I said, that could easily change, but for now, that's just kind of what it looks like. And West Ham are the ones who look the most likely to drag themselves out, but then again, not likely. Burnley and Wolves, I don't see it. Wolves are probably, I saw a stat that they are on track to be the lowest scoring team in the Premier League in quite some time, I think in the last 20 years or so. And that's not what you want to see. So, condolences to all the Wolves fans out there. It's got to be a really tough season, and anyone on the outside looking in can tell that management just did not do their jobs or did not want to do their jobs by not investing in the squad in the summer and really not just this summer, but over the last 3 to 5 years. The squad's kind of actively decayed over time by selling players and then not reinvesting that or not reinvesting properly. So yeah, we'll have to see how things progress as far as relegation goes, but West Ham, Burnley, and Wolves seem earmarked to be going down this season, is what it seems like. So, with that in mind, I want to talk about some of the fixtures we've got coming up for Game Week 19 that will start here very soon. So, pulling from FPL page, which is FPL Focal Site, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast. The top teams for clean sheet percentage chance go as follows. Arsenal is at a 46% chance of a clean sheet. That's really good. It does seem a little skewed, in my opinion. Aston Villa at home is going to be a difficult fixture for them because Villa are in such great form right now. So I would take that 46% clean sheet chance with a little grain of salt. But I would waver on the side of saying I think that Villa are likely to score a goal. And the thing about this, though, that I think could swing your decision on whether or not you're going to go for an Arsenal defender is whether or not you think that Gabriel is going to be starting and playing 70 to 90 minutes in this fixture against Villa. If Gabriel starts, he is a great pick to have in your team because we know he has the goal threat. And we know that the second that he's playing, Arsenal's defense is much more robust and a lot more steady. And not that their backups haven't been doing a great job, but Gabriel's one of the best left-sided center backs in the entire world whenever he's fit. And that's the question: is he fully fit? So that's going to be up to your judgment as an FPL manager. I was thinking about going there myself, and that the last 2 days, as I've been pondering over my moves, Gabriel was number one on the list. He was someone that I thought was for sure going to come in and would stay in my team for the rest of the season. I think I might postpone bringing him in for another week, is what I'm thinking. I also don't want him to skyrocket in price, but I can easily bring in another player for Game Week 18 and keep an extra transfer that I would make otherwise and bring him in for Game Week 19, bring him in for Game Week 20, I should say. So that would be when Arsenal are playing Bournemouth away. I do know that that is one game before Liverpool at home, but we always know that Gabriel is right. He's always knocking on the door for an attacking return. And as we've seen, he's also been a DEFCON monster as well. So he's someone that I think all of us will want to have in our teams, but I really just have to get through one more day, one more night of price rises, and hopefully he doesn't rise tonight, which would be incredible. And then I can get him in even tomorrow afternoon once the deadline passes and we're going into game week 20. So Gabriel is definitely one of those picks I recommend. We also saw Rice getting an assist this week, which was, good for Rice and everything, but once again frustrating as a Saka owner because Saka's looked really good the last couple of weeks, but the returns have not followed the way that I would want them to, is the main problem. Like I said, whenever I was talking about my team, Saka ended up on 7 points. But if I read off his previous returns, and I'll go back a couple game weeks for this. So 7 points in game week 18, and then 3 points, 11 points, 4 points, 6 points, 5 points, 4 points, 12 points. So it's one of those things where Saka, some of these weeks, he could have been on a 15 to 18 pointer easily. He's getting in really good positions, but he's not finishing his lunch sometimes. He's not putting away those chances that in the past we would see him easily putting away and being more clinical than what he currently is being. So Soccer is one of those players that I know, and my other half of the podcast, Paul, knows as well. Saka is always on the verge of a big return. So I'm going to give him at least one more week, see how he does against Villa. I know the Gunners are going to be fully up for this match against Villa after how things went whenever they played at Villa a couple weeks ago. There's going to be a chip on their shoulder, and I think that Saka is going to be the one that's leading that charge. I would expect a big game from him. And that's not just him creating space for his teammates or creating chances. I think he's going to be creating chances and finishing chances as well. So if you have Saka, I would encourage you to keep him for at least one more week. Let's see how this plays out with Aston Villa at home and yeah, go from there. So that's my quick little update on the Arsenal team there and what I see. But yeah, so to summarize that, I think Gabriel would be a really interesting pick. And I think hold Saka if you have Rice. Rice is a good pick at his price. Doesn't get much better around his price point. Unless you have Ryan Cherky. Cherky has been a really good pick, and he's someone that I want to mention as well in the projected goals section that we find here on the FPL Focal page because City are projected 2.3 goals away to Sunderland. I I could see them getting 3 or 4 goals in that game. Sunderland have been pretty fortunate at times with their expected figures. They have been, I can pull up the numbers here, but I really think that, you know, expected figures are something we can use as a basis to have an idea of what's going to happen in the future. And Sunderland have done a great job of conceding only 1 goal per match. But when we look a little bit deeper into the numbers, as far as XG conceded goes, so the expected goals that they would be expected to concede, they have an XGC of 24.6 with only 18 goals conceded. So that's a delta there of about 7. And I would expect that to average out. I would expect them to get closer to their XGC figure with goals conceded. So I know it's difficult because they've been really good at home at the Stadium of Light, but I think City can have a lot of joy in this fixture, and they know that they need to put them away early and set the tone of the match. If we see an early Holland goal or Foden finds the back of the net, but and then maybe Turkey, right? I don't know about a clean sheet for City. That's one point where I'm not so sure about from an FPL investing perspective. If you don't have City assets defensively, I wouldn't go there this week. The fixtures do get better for City defensively, where Brighton at home in game week 21, and then United away and Wolves at home in 23. So there are fixtures there that we'll want to invest in, but I wouldn't recommend going quite there yet. Other team I want to mention for projected goals, This upcoming fixture for game week 19 is Chelsea. They have Bournemouth at home, and we saw Cole Palmer playing, I think, a full 90 minutes this week, which is something that just hasn't really happened this season yet. So let me see. I've got it right here. He played 72 minutes against Aston Villa, which, was around the time that Aston Villa started scoring their goals. So something to keep an eye on there. But Palmer is someone who's incredibly important to how Chelsea play and really determines, I think, their tempo. He's someone that when he's on, Chelsea are, I don't want to say one of the best teams in Europe, but they become a much better team when Palmer's on the pitch. So we'll keep an eye on that, but he's someone that I would potentially recommend getting in because Bournemouth are really wobbling right now. They don't look great. And that puts them in a position where investing in Chelsea attackers this week could be a really good call that I would be on board with. Any listeners out there who are thinking about going there, I'm good with that move. So um yeah, I think that's kind of what are some of the high notes. The other game I think we really need to talk about because we talked about the other four most influential of the week. We need to talk about Liverpool. They have Leeds at home. I do not think Liverpool keep a clean sheet in this fixture. Leeds have been scoring goals. Calvert-Lewin is in the form of his life, the last 5 years, whatever you want to call it. He's been playing really well. He's really settled into this lead squad, kind of as the elder statesman and putting away his chances that he's getting. It's a shame he didn't do it when I had him in my team earlier in the season, but it is what it is. He's someone who's really struggled with injuries, so I don't want to hold it against him at all. It does feel somewhat intentional that he didn't return when I had him, but I can get over it. So I do think that outside of the defense, I think going with the Liverpool attacker is a good call for this week. Where I would go, there's two people in my mind that make sense. It's either Verts, who got his first goal of the season, and I think we'll see his confidence continue to grow and develop following that first goal as a Liverpool player at home in the Premier League, or go with Ekatike, who is going to be Liverpool's locked-in starting number 9 for the next month or two at least, until Isak can get back. What that allows us to do is we know we have someone on the pitch we can rely on to be the figurehead of their attack. And, everything considered, how Liverpool's season has been a little up and down, they have a really talented squad. And if Verts continues to figure it out as it looks like he is, then Ekatike's value really starts becoming something a little different if he's going to be able to influence the play the way that we expect him to. So I would say those are the two best picks in my mind if you're going to go with Liverpool. They've both been looking really good as of late. So yeah, those will cover the main fixtures for this upcoming game week 19. What I want to do now is the other half of our podcast, Paul, has sent in some questions that he wants me to answer while live on the podcast. So to start out with, his first question is Cherokee or Foden? If so, between the two, who has the higher upside currently? This is tricky because whenever I think about Man City, I'm really thinking about where Foden is occupying. And if I pull up his position from the last match, whenever they played Forest, the thing about it is Foden is not playing as centrally as he was before Doku got injured, which really is detrimental to him in the long run. Because we see Foden playing more on that left side where we know he's not as good. He's so good in those little half spaces where he can get the ball on turn. And then, you think about it, anytime you see him with a chance where, he's right outside the box on that little right half space and he's trying to bend it into the far corner, he's really clinical in those situations and he's found form as of late. So not seeing him take up those positions as much leans me toward saying that Cherokee's the better pick because he's the one in those positions right now. What that makes me think is that Cherokee's the better pick if you're bringing in a city asset. I would not encourage anyone to make the move from Foden to Cherokee or Cherokee to Foden. I think it's a very sideways move, and week to week, it could bite you really hard if you make that move. I could see in this fixture against Sunderland where, Sunderland are keyed into Holland and Foden gets space. There's a goal, an assists, multiple returns, however you want to frame it, for Foden in that fixture. So do not move off of Foden. I know that Cherokee is cheaper, but there is going to be a little risk there because we don't know when Doku's going to be back. I think it was mentioned sometime around January, but he could be back sooner than that too. So there's a lot of, you know, I'm just not sure the right way to go there. So I would advise if you're bringing in a new city midfielder, I think Cherokee's a great pick because he's cheaper, and I live now. He seems pretty locked in the starting 11, but do not go sideways. Don't go Foden to Cherokee. I don't think that's a wise idea. So just my 2 cents there for all of you listening out there. So next, Paul's question is, what defense do you want to invest in right now? Is it more fixture? Is it more form based or fixture based? The team that I want to invest in for the next couple of weeks is actually Manchester United. Manchester United have not been great defensively, but the good thing about Manchester United is we don't need them for a long time. That's the important thing here. We can pick up Manchester United assets for a 3-game stretch and hope that they keep another clean sheet, maybe 1 or 2 clean sheets in the next 3. But there's the potential for attacking returns there because we have two really good options, I think, to invest in for the Manchester United defense that I think will be getting returns. So we have Diego Dallo, who was the top player for the past week based upon, let me pull this up real quick. So for the current game week, so game week 18, Dallo was the third highest expected goal involvement player of the game week. So he ended up with an XGI of 0.5, which was entirely from his XG. So an XG of 0.5 from a 4.5 million defender who has Wolves, Leeds, and Burnley next. That sounds like a great pick to me. And we also have Dorgu as well, who, as we all know, had the 17-pointer last week and is priced at 4.1 million. That's really good value there. So I think one of those two would be where I'd be looking at short term for the next 3 game weeks. And then obviously, what defense would I want? I want Arsenal defense. Arsenal defense is going to be the bread and butter of a lot of teams going forward. And Gabriel is the one that we know makes a huge difference. Not to mention, he's the type of player that is always on the verge of attacking return. So not just the defensive stability of Arsenal, but their kind of reliance upon set piece goals and him always being involved in those. So I think that Gabriel's someone that will be coming into a lot of teams very soon, and he'll be coming into mine as well. So the defense I would target would be Arsenal long term and Manchester United short term. So Paul also said next, pick one asset that should be nailed into everyone's teams going forward. So a defender, a midfielder, and an attacker. The attacker that seems obvious is Holland. Um, as a forward, you have to have him. If you don't have him, good luck. That's all I'm gonna say on that because we've talked about that on the podcast already. Midfielder, this one's a bit trickier because we've had a lot of injuries this season. And I think the player I would usually default to here is Bruno Fernandes as the one midfielder that I think everybody has to have. Since he's not currently playing, I think the midfielder that I would say that everyone has to have It's tough. It's tough because we see these spikes, right? Where players are good in form and then they drop out of form. I think Bruno Fernandez is the must-have when he's fit. But if he's not fit, I think Saka has a big week this week. And if he gets that 12 to 17 pointer anywhere in that gap, he's going to skyrocket in price, regardless of what the fixtures look like. So I would say preferably Bruno Fernandez, but secondly, Saka's right up there. I think people not having Saka have gotten pretty fortunate up to this point because if he was just a little more clinical, he would have had a couple of really big hauls so far. So, and then as far as a defender goes, I have to default to let me check something real fast. I think for the upcoming run of fixtures, I think Lewis Hall must have. He's been really good as of late. Which really attacking. The question is, can he stay fit? But I feel like he's going to, because Newcastle need him. Like they have to have him. They look like a much different team with him starting. So Lewis Hall would be the pick for me for the upcoming run. And then, like I just talked about, Gabriel is the one for me that I think everyone has to have. So we'll be seeing a lot of managers go back to Gabriel here in the very, very near future. And then finally, Paul's question, which is not a question. He says, please explain why Arsenal are going to beat Villa 10-0 tomorrow. Well, Paul, you know what? I think the best thing for us to do is to leave it to you to explain why Arsenal beat Villa 10-0 next time we're on the podcast. So I will leave that one in your hands because I know you'll do a much more thorough and adequate job than I would because you are the Arsenal expert and I'm not. I'm not the Arsenal expert. So I do expect that to be a good fixture. I will say. I don't think 10-0's in the cards, but I do think Arsenal will win the fixture. I think they'll get 3 points at home. I think where I'm not sure is if Arsenal keep a clean sheet because Villa are really good at hitting them on the counter. And they've shown that I think Unai Emery always does a really good job against his ex-team. So I don't know. For a score prediction, I would have to say Arsenal 2, Villa 1. Maybe Arsenal 3, Villa 2. That feels more like I think there will be goals scored in the match tomorrow. But that is about it for all of Paul's questions. And I think that's going to bring me to the end of the podcast here. As far as final thoughts go, I do think that Holland is the best captaincy pick this week. There are other interesting picks. I think Ekitike is someone that people will go with. I also think that people are crazy for transferring Rodgers in this week. He's the fourth highest transferred in player. That kind of blows my mind a little bit, but who knows? Maybe Morgan Rogers has another moment of brilliance in him. Yeah, the ownership's getting up there. He's at about 23% ownership, which I didn't really realize. So, yeah, but as I said, that's going to wrap us up for today. I wish you all the best of luck with game week 19. It's going to be a fun one. You got midweek fixtures. Should be good watching. There's some really juicy fixtures this weekend too. So this week, not this weekend. I can't say that. It's not this weekend. It's this week. So, yeah. But with that, I will get out of here, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, morning, evening, whatever it is. Hope it goes well, and thanks for tuning in this week. We'll be back with you guys next week. Thanks. Oh, by the way, hope everyone had a great holiday season, and wishing you all the best of luck in the new year. It's kind of wild we're going into 2026. It's been a very eventful and, quite busy year for us here at Toppins with Twins in 2025. So wish you all the best of luck and best of wishes in 2026. Be sure to reach out, let us know what you think of the episode, and continue to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. So thanks everyone, and we'll be back with you all next week. Bye.